Yes. I found a few, and you were actually CC'd on them, but I wasn't sure whether they were duplicates, so I just sent them anyway.
No. Did you compare? No. Okay.
No, I didn't. Honestly, what I did is I did the searches that I usually do and just went back to January 1st and dumped them.
That's what I did. I looked at them.
Hi, Allison.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
Good. Do you have the school bus come at 3:30 every afternoon or anything like that?
Yep, 3:30 usually around then. Yep.
Allison, would you just say testing 1, 2, 3 so that Millie can make sure you're heard?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
No, it sounds fine. Yeah. She sounds like the wizard. She is the wizard. She's behind the curtain.
Allison, can you hear me?
Yes. Are you hearing me okay?
Yep, we heard
Yes.
you okay.
Are you hearing
Okay.
us okay?
You're calling me.
Yes, I know.
Do you want me to answer?
Yes.
What? Why?
He wants to try the feedback loop.
Hi. Yes.
Are Molly and do we have a quorum for Christ's sake? I'll text them. So Millie, you like Cooperstown? It's a pretty sweet little town, isn't it? Yeah. Was the farm museum open? No, that's too bad.
But yeah, it was a beautiful time. I left on Saturday. We went to Fruit Friday. Saturday morning, there were people everywhere who are in all of their baseball.
Their baseball uniforms, and that's great. That's great.
Did I tell you that my mother and father came down to?
No.
They came down to take pizza night out for dinner.
Oh, nice. Where do they live?
I think it's still around.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Car.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
That's, I mean, they not, so I'm basically, baseball.
Sure. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Yes, right. Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Did they move there when they retired, this stuff?
Yeah.
Or did you grow up there? Yeah. Right. I just saw speed racer pulling Martha Ball with her lead foot scream into the parking lot.
And Neil's not.
Neil's not here.
Sven is having this.
Starting at 4,
Apparently not.
right? That wasn't really a question of have you started the meeting? I expected to walk in here and see 3 other people at the table and I'm like, oh.
Sorry. I'd like to call this meeting of the New Shoreham Town Council to order. Today is Wednesday, April 5th. It is 4:07. Joining us today is Allison Ring, the town planner. It's good to see you, Allison.
Thanks, you too.
Hey, guys, we're underway. So, it's great. It's always good to have Open Meetings Act violations on camera. The first item on our agenda is is a follow-up on a meeting we had, joint meeting with the planning board. That was a really good, I thought, beginning discussion of closer and more coordinated work between the planning board and the town council, and that's a priority of mine. And during that meeting, Allison agreed to share with us, put together and share with us an updated version of the updated implementation status report for the comprehensive plan. And before we start, I just want to say thank you to Allison, because I thought that document, for someone like me, and I think others who don't have time to go through the telephone book regularly, is a really, really helpful tool as we try to, assuming we develop sort of priorities for quicker action on certain things. It's an important tool to keep stuff in front of us and the status kind of active. So I just think it's a great document, and I really appreciated it, Allison. My thought about this meeting is, given that we're working off of this document, my primary issues or interests for this meeting are around housing and planning, and that sort of thing. There were a couple of other sort of stray questions that come up as you're going through a document like this. So I was thinking if we could take it from the top, as it were,
Sure.
but spend the bulk of our time on that meatier stuff around housing, et cetera. Does that work for you?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just give a little background as to the document. So the town's current comprehensive plan was adopted in 2016. And as part of the state's amendments about a decade ago, I think it's 2011, the state made amendments to the Comprehensive Planning and Land Use Act. And so at that time, they made comprehensive plans required to be every 10 years. Prior to that, it had been every 5 years. So as part of that extended time frame for updates, they added a requirement that municipalities submit what's referred to as a 5-year implementation status report, because, as you said, they wanted that to be a tool that so communities can kind of check in. Well, the state wants to see the progress, but also really a tool for the municipalities as well, to see how the community is doing in implementing the comprehensive plan. And it's also a helpful kind of head start in when a community is about to update their comprehensive plan. You can see which action items have been implemented, or which action items maybe are no longer a priority, or not something the community wants to implement, and could be eliminated from the next comprehensive plan update. So this report was prepared last year. So it was submitted, as you see, it was dated June 2022. So there may be, as you read through, you probably noticed some action items have progressed, obviously, since then. And not all of the action items are here. This is really tried to be a summary. I mean, it is 20 pages, but the full comprehensive plan, has well over 100 action items. And so this was an effort to put together a majority of the action items, all of them that we felt that, had a status to provide, as far as there's been progress, or it's been completely implemented, partially implemented, or maybe it may not have been implemented, but a reason for that. That's what the state had asked for. So I can walk through, some of the, I guess, action items, kind of the key ones through the document if you'd like, or if you'd want
Sure.
to, or if you have key ones, like you have questions, or if you wanted to go with the ones you have interest in, or I could highlight, a dozen or so.
I mean, for me, I'd like to go through, because we don't have a huge amount of time today.
Yes, sure.
I'd like to go through the ones that are of particular note for people.
Absolutely. Yep.
One that doesn't involve planning at all, but that I'm sure Mary Ann flagged as well, is actually right at the very beginning. The pursuit of a National Register landmark for Northlight. Sorry to start with one of these, but it's front of mind because it could be important. I don't know the benefits and drawbacks. I should start by saying that. However, as the regulatory process around the expansion of wind farms happens, some of the impact fees that some communities have gotten have focused on impacted historic properties, impacted properties that are on the National Historic Register. And not everybody knows this, but some of these wind farms will actually be visible from the Northlight when you're. It's like it's HCA1. It's on page
5.
Page 5. Yeah, sorry. So I just wanted to flag it, Marianne, you know, we've been on these calls for 2 years now, but it just, when I saw that, I remember talking about that. So I don't even know what the process is or who ends up being in charge of that, but getting that listed actually might serve some purpose. And I know Martha's been
I-
on the board there.
Can speak to that.
Thank you.
I have not been on the board of the North Light. I'm on the board of the Southeast Light, the Southeast Lighthouse. And I was purely unrelated to this. I was talking with Jerry Abbott, who's been the president of that since it was formed the other night. And the Southeast Light has been under National Historic Landmark status since the 90s. And he just sort of mentioned in passing how much difference that has made and how that has given us a foot in the door to, even though it's taken 30 years to get, you know, a lot of money that we would probably not otherwise have gotten. And Lisa Nolan did work on that, and Jerry, and they're great resources. I don't know anything about it other than it was a lot of work.
That's more than I know. I just know that it does give
Yeah.
us access, and we have a particularly contemporary example of potentially being able to get money. I mean, we have in the next 2 years of the capital program, if I recall correctly, close to $300,000 of town money going into that. And it strikes me as it, you know, it might be a priority for, you know, if it gets National Historic Register status, it might be something that the grant writers can work with Marianne, you know.
We're not talking register, are we? They're two different things.
Designation.
Because national, they might even be on the register. I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
But you're right. there's
landmark is a whole nother level.
Yeah. Sorry.
I know you jumped into page 5. You said it was in the beginning.
Yeah, sorry.
Can we, so I'm not, I want to be respectful of the process, but one of the things that I thought was on page 3, and oh, sorry. I thought.
I guess I would just, this is probably more comment maybe for Marianne, but can we figure out whether there's, you know, is this how exhaustive a process is this? Is it, you know, I just don't know anything about it. I just know that it's an opportunity. Thank you.
We can, I recall this, this was something Robbie Gilpin had mentioned when we were going through the comprehensive plan update process. He had made this recommendation at that time. And Charlene provided the update. So you know, I think it's something, you know, the North Light Commission, checking in with them. There's an application form available online. So, you know, we could take a look at that and maybe see how much the North Light Commission can complete. And if they need assistance, by town staff or the grant, in the grant writers would write the application for the for the National Register, National Landmark. But I think that was part of the thought process, and getting that designation could assist with making grant funds potentially available.
Wonderful, thank you.
And we do already have one out here. So there's probably information available
Right.
and how that process
And
was
people have
followed.
gone through it, right? Sen.
Well, since we're following this one, I guess one question would be, as a council, if I look at the 2 lighthouses and the commissions that are on those lighthouses, they seem to have very different roles, right? The North Light is very functional. They're trying to, you know,
Yeah.
I don't want to say the wrong way, but a lot of people trying to make sure that the building stays standing,
Yes,
kind of thing.
right, yeah.
The Southeast Light has morphed, or maybe it was always that way, but morphed to a bit of a a lot of a director, and a board that's not necessarily, you know, hammers and nails and boots on the ground. And I'm not sure, if I think about Mark or anybody on that North Light, whether there are people that are thinking about this.
Mhm.
And so I guess as I think about the 2, is that something that's in our auspices? Like, Marianne can do it as a town manager, but in reality, if there was a group with the North Light that was very focused on the blend of how do we think about national registers? How do we think about long-term this? I mean, it's very different than making sure the 4 walls are standing.
Sure.
And,
It
and
is.
maybe I'm
No,
trying to
it's-
morph into how do we lead towards that?
Yeah,
But I think that might be the difference between volunteers and paid staff. Right, so
But most are I mean, there's one. page.
Southeast Lighthouse Foundation has a paid director,
One person, right?
but who's paid, they're also a recognized foundation. So that makes them available for grant funding and things, or just as Keith pointed out, like they were included in the wind farm money.
Big time.
Whereas, right, but the Northlight wasn't. So the Northlight is owned by the town. That would involve us creating a position. Right, so we would have to take some action.
that's where I'm going.
We own it, you know,
Right.
the town owns it. We would have to take some action, create a foundation, hire a director. Am I wrong about this? Or are you the director, Marion?
What I was going to say is, I'll be happy to explore what it would take, but I'm not sure if I'm going to have the bandwidth to do.
Oh,
what we
to-
want.
No, that's my
that's
point.
kind of, that's.
That's
I
where
was
I'm
gonna
coming
say-
from.
Yes, I know you don't as well. That's why I was sort of being cautious about, like, I don't even know what it involves. Is it the kind of thing you have to
Well, no, and I
pay
mean,
somebody to do?
and
I'm
we
sorry,
shouldn't
it's like-
let the conversation go by without thanking Robbie Gilpin. I know I make fun of how often Keith thanks people, but like, we need to thank Robbie Gilpin for all the hard work
Yes.
he's done on that, right? Like,
Yeah,
And so to Marianne's, I agree with you 100%. And I think we have many times, but you can never not enough. So I think that is it a council question as to how do we think through structuring or setting up a foundation, or whatever the structure will be, to be able to have the Northlight be the beacon it can be. I'll leave it at that.
So let me do this. Let me see what I can get for information. And I get a feeling Shirley may be extremely helpful with this dialogue
on
and
it
the
for a while, yeah.
conversation. And then, because we're kind of swimming in a lane here where we don't have enough information. So let's get the information and go
Absolutely.
from there.
So you can also get information from Jerry, Dr. Abbott. And I know that, and I was thinking about this morning, I think, that we had two senators at the time who were also very helpful. And we are in a position, I think, right now, we've got senators who are aware of us.
Yeah.
And this is probably a good time to
it's a good point.
do it.
Yeah.
To try to do it. But it is a great deal of work.
Yes.
Huge.
Thank you, Marion. I
Thank-
wasn't throwing off the invitation.
So the only,
Absolutely.
just before we get to the Northlight on page 3 on RC1, C2, which is about the Shoreline Access Working Group. You know, first of all, congratulations to the town, Tom, everybody for the walkway that was done at Andy's Way. And I think that is about as nice as it gets. The second priority on that list was Gracie's Cove, which if anybody's been down there, is a fairly dangerous, crazy pathway. And CRMC walked with Mike Shea and myself, actually. I just think this we got to get focused to it. And it's all about funding.
And
It's
I-
all about grant work. And it's going to be $100,000 type of, I mean, it's not a small project. And I just want to keep attention on
Yes.
that and figure out either it's,
I recall that Marianne, we didn't get this round, but we're in line for the next round.
No, we submitted twice on Gracie Cove and,
Yeah.
and both, last two times we haven't gotten it,
Gotcha.
a DEM grant. So that is not the route to go. I
Okay.
don't think any further with them. With grant writers, we may be able to explore some other grant opportunities. This one wasn't on the top of my list, but I can bump it up and start some of that dialogue.
That's one of those that for me is not just a shoreline access, but like a liability problem that really concerns me, you know? Go ahead, Gail.
Yeah, I
You
Give
do,
the
I'm
microphone.
sorry.
Sorry.
And Gail, can you just make sure the green,
Yeah, there we go.
can you make sure the green light is on too, please?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Gail Hall. Because we're down there just about
Yeah.
every day, two things. One, it's just so important that some expertise goes into the planning of any reconstruction there because it's going to get washed out.
Yeah,
Two, it just, everything gets washed out there. The water creeps all the way up to the entrance area on a heavy storm. The
Yeah.
waves get really big over there, as you all know. But two, maybe even just in the interim, Mike and crew can just clean it up a little bit to make it passable for some. It's fine for us, but definitely won't be fine for older people. And as you mentioned, the liability factor. But Jeff mentions it all the time, like how much money can you spend and what, like you can't do an Andy's Way project there. You can't, I mean, what, so many things that
Yeah, it'd
you
be gone
can
and-
see all the
yeah.
chunks of asphalt
Yeah.
from the last time improvements were made that are just,
I don't, I'm not trying to
irrelevant.
solve it now. I'm just making sure it,
Yes.
gotcha.
well,
Yeah.
I'm just,
Thank
don't.
you.
I want it to bubble up, especially with grant writers, because I think it's an area that we need to pay attention to.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. Yeah, we just went yesterday morning and thought, gosh, it's
Beautiful place. Dave Lewis.
David, sorry.
Very quickly, but importantly, David Lewis, Kunimus Road, very quickly and importantly is the following. On page 3, that is a quick conversation just to get it noted, but, and so with regard to the shoreline working group, I'm not sure how many there have been, including the one that was done by Reed Kingsbury Chair and several others in around 2000. So there may be another one, but I know at least in that one in 2000, what was noted as requiring town's attention to sustain was the right-of-way at Southwest Point, not the one that is traditionally referred to as the lumberyard, because that was subdivided away into a building lot, which now has houses on it. But much further to the south, abutting a gentleman named Malone and the roadway that goes to Hartner's house is a 8-foot right of way that was deeded to the town as part of that subdivision of, what was the name of it? Got it right here. Sorry, I don't. It's on my, no, well, there were 3 major subdivisions down there. Let's not get bogged down in the details. It's way to at the extreme left on, just before you get to Hartnett's house. It's an 8-foot right of way that was deeded to the town along with two-car laybys on either side of the main road coming in to that area. And they've never been adequately marked. They do get a lot of public use by fishermen. It does get a lot of public use by fishermen and by surfers and other beach walkers because it's the only legal way to get to the beach unless you go to Coast Guard, Kunimus Road Coast Guard Station or Black Rock. The point being is the town, nobody has ever maintained that in terms of making sure that the budding property owners are respecting the 8-foot boundary. Both sides have been encroached on by stone walls so that the 8 feet is not even 8 feet in some places. It's not a very formal path, but it's an important path. My dad was on the planning board in 1984 and Dorothy McCluskey and others, probably Vinnie McAloon too. They fought hard to get that. It's the only concession they can get. Back in those days. The planning board didn't wield the same leverage as they do today. They were lucky to get that, and it's important that the town identify where the boundary really is and mark the laybys so that in the future, there's no contest about it. Mr. Malone, I've talked to him in 1998. He was very receptive to it being there, acknowledged the importance of it. And part of that importance was from the planning board was to make sure we could at least get a vehicle down there or people carrying a stretcher off the beach for safety reasons.
Sure.
So there's a lot of reasons to sustain that. And it's not a big deal. It just needs to be surveyed and marked out and those markings maintained and also make good neighbors, good friends with the neighbors. So I would ask that
Yes.
whoever is cognizant for this kind of stuff, I'm not sure if anybody really is, but it needs to get the appropriate attention. So I yield for more important things.
No, but just so you know, David, in 2015, there was a shoreline access working group that Mike Shea led.
I thought there was.
Yeah, and I was on it. And actually that one path you just talked about was a huge discussion because actually somebody put boulders in and what was 8 foot was actually 2 foot. And one of the boulders was moved back a bit. But the big problem, to your point, you're getting new owners who don't necessarily want people walking down by their property, whether they should or shouldn't. And things get tighter and tighter and tighter. strategically. Let's just leave it at that. So I think you're exactly right on many, I mean, there are many other points like that too.
Two key facts that, for the record, Molly could look it up if she had to.
Millie?
The deed is volume 63057 to the town, and the map is not up. It's not in the normal map section. This is called the plat 275, sheet 2 of 6, recorded April 25th, 1984. So anybody can call me if they need those numbers
Thank you,
back.
David. Thank you. Allison, are you tired from all the talking?
No, I'm fine.
I have one that I wanted to talk about, that is on page, let's see, what is it? Page 6. H1C1 and a few of the ones below it identify both town and privately owned properties which could be suitable sites for the development of affordable residential units. You and Jen, I think, did a terrific job of that, providing us with that. I think it was last summer. And I was going to ask something that we talked about. I don't know whether you were on a night recently, Allison, for a work session. I think it was last week. But we were talking about the concept of maintaining an inventory of non-conforming lots, and potentially, first of all, to know what we have. Secondly, there might well be owners of non-conforming lots who have no intention, theoretically, of doing anything with them, who might be willing to donate them to the housing board, say, or somewhere else that might make good spots for small affordable houses. I just think it's an arrow that we should have in our quiver.
Sure, and that's something, yeah, I can prepare with the GIS. I think I had done something similar on, a few years ago. But yeah, I will do a new analysis.
There's another thing that I know you and Jen have worked on, the sort of inventory of 513s, or inventory of accessory dwelling units. And I'm wondering if that is an actual document, whether it says a database and map has been prepared. And it
Yeah, so-
probably has, if you could share that, I think that would be a helpful thing for folks to have.
So the building department would have I think they keep
Great.
the spreadsheet. They're the ones that did the inspections on it. And then I have the buildings in the GIS for which ones are accessory dwelling units and their status based on the building department's report. So I wouldn't say it's a report, but it's, I don't know what format it's in, but the building department only has a spreadsheet of the status of them, the locations and.
Yeah, I think the problem with a lot of these things is they're available, but people don't know they're available. And then somebody says they're not available and somebody else says they're not available. And then you end up with nothing's available when it's been.
Well, it's an internal, yeah, I mean, it's an internal working document.
Well,
It's-
that's what we're talking about, not about perhaps making it available to people. So it's not, you don't have to go through this argument every time it comes up because it should be available. It's public information, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not saying you can't have it. I'm just
No,
saying it hasn't been published. It's, yeah.
Right. I think you get the point. It is a steady drumbeat that there are dozens of accessory dwelling units that are being used in a manner that's inconsistent with their approvals. And I think the research that you did, probably Jen did, Tom did, I don't know exactly who it was, Mary.
Yeah, I wasn't involved. Yeah.
Uh,
it's Tom and
Dem-
Karen did,
Demonstrated that
Mhm.
as Martha says, the people who obeyed the rules and actually got approval for their 513s are the least likely people to be abusing them. And I just, I think having a bright line around what's approved and what's not approved is a big part of the, sort of dispelling that. Anybody have anything on this page?
I had a question about, which one is it? H1F1, evaluate demand for senior and special needs housing. I know you did this back in June, but wouldn't that relate to what we discussed the other night? What was 518, I don't have my paperwork in front of me. Didn't that address that, being able to build a unit within your home for senior housing or housing?
So as I understand it, Allison, the comprehensive plan directed the town basically to evaluate whether there's demand. And then what we're talking about with, that sort of general accessory dwelling unit conversation that we sort of put off until the legislature acts and we have a new picture,
Okay,
was actually coming up with potentially tools
to answer it.
that answer
Okay.
that and other things. And it may be that accessory dwelling units actually aren't an answer. I know, for example, that the rental project that Cindy Pappas and her board is working on, and Allison, no doubt, has, I think, 2 fully accessible units. Is that right, Allison?
The current design for the
Yes.
O'Brien property. Yeah, I believe that's what I heard the last time. There would be, I thought 1 ADU, but then maybe even 2 now. Yeah, 2 ADUs. I mean, not ADUs.
think it's
I'm
2.
sorry. I'm so used to saying ADUs all the time. Yes, handicap accessible apartments.
And can I ask, related to this, do we have a list? If someone wanted housing, whether it was affordable housing or just year-round housing, or is there a list? Is there is there some place where they can say, I want to put my name on the list? Does that exist? Or is this all anecdotally? We're like, oh, there's no housing, but we don't know how many people really need do you know what I'm saying? Like, do we even know how many people need housing?
Keith, I can respond to that.
Yes, please,
that?
Millie.
I can respond to that. And we have, as the housing board collects names of people asking about housing and then keeps a spreadsheet. So we have a spreadsheet which, holds basically, name, address, contact information, if you will. And then, what their size, family size is. Essentially, we only are using that as a contact list when, it comes time to, when it comes time for Ball O'Brien. We don't have any other housing options that we're aware of that we put out.
Thanks.
Only, you done? Allison, and since 2 other people are in the Sea Level Rise Committee, HC1B1, which is documented photograph high tides, there's a number of things in here that I think.
What page are you on?
Oh, I'm sorry, page 5.
Great.
Back to page
Thank
5.
you.
I think there are a number of things in here that the Sea Level Rise Committee should probably be more made aware of. So in other words, if this is going to be in the comprehensive plan, maybe it's a charge to that committee. Because I know in meetings, it's sort of been like, okay, what should we be doing, but what are we being held accountable? And I think there are a number of things in here, Allison, that maybe we can review with Judy at the next meeting, because HC1B1, for example, it really talks right in that strike zone. And maybe that's something that committee should build the database on, or be able to work with planning on doing it.
Right, and I do recall, I think it was just, last night's meeting, Judy mentioned about documenting that. And the Sea Level Rise Committee, didn't exist when this comp plan was adopted, so it's not listed as is it not listed as a responsible party? No, I don't think it is, because it wasn't, but I did provide the Sea Level Rise Committee all the sections of the comp plan, all the action items related to sea level rise and climate change. But again, that was, we can bring that up again because that was last
Sure.
year. So,
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else before we move on? You guys are welcome to ask if you want. It's a work session. on the next page, which is page 7, there are a couple of things on this page that I just want to follow up on, in the status report, there are a few locations where we have the planning board has discussed and is drafting. One of them is H2A1, foster public-private partnerships to address seasonal workforce housing needs. There's another one, education and outreach to raise awareness about seasonal workforce housing needs. The planning board is reviewing / drafting zoning amendments for dormitory style housing for seasonal workers. The one above that, planning board discussed amendments to the zoning ordinance to add dormitory style housing as permitted use. The matter is currently tabled. And I'm just curious, is there some list of these things that, there's a few spots in here where you say it's sort of, if not on a list, then under consideration. And there were things that I wasn't aware were being talked about. Does that list exist somewhere, or?
Of zoning amendments the planning board is considering or on their, we have in the past, I'd have to look back. There have been on the agendas discussion like prioritizing zoning amendments and implementing the comp plan, and the planning board does have several, some of them of which are action items in this comp plan for zoning amendments to be drafted. It's just finding the time, things come up, other zoning amendments, get on the agenda, and just finding the time with the other applications to get to them.
Please know that I am not asking these questions like, why haven't you gotten to it?
No, I know, but I'm just explaining.
I'm asking, like, if there are 7 of these things, okay? We should decide as a community planning board, maybe the community at large, maybe the planning board and the town council, like getting these two done in the next 9 months, that's a really important thing to do. In other words, I think things are much more achievable when they're broken down into bites. And if we need to, and I have no idea where I stand on any of this stuff. It just occurred to me. If we decide that what we really need is enable dormitory style housing for summer workers in a particular zone. If that's what the priority is, then let's get to work on it,
So, yeah, I think in that case, looking at the comp plan, there was, obviously a lot of focus on housing as a priority, and one need being seasonal workforce housing. And that, when drafting the comprehensive plan, an action item, or as we saw applications before the planning board coming in, and there's no permitted use for seasonal workforce housing in regards to like a dormitory style. So it was people were using in as the use, or 513s. So we had started drafting a dormitory ordinance, but I think just concerns, in that process, or that there was other zoning that it was being created without that. It just got tabled. So, we can certainly revisit it if it's priority.
I wasn't saying that. I was saying, when you go through this thing, if there are 6 areas that would require ordinance changes, we ought to know those and have a sense of which ones are numbers 1 and 2, which ones are numbers 2 and 3, so that we don't, if there's something that the comprehensive plan calls out as important, and the people halfway through the comprehensive plan think is still important, and we haven't gotten to the ordinance change, let's get to it. So, but there's no way that you have the time, the planning board has the time, anybody has the time to pump through, 8 major planning ordinance, zoning ordinance changes. Let's pick a couple of them and work on them. Does that?
So let me see if I can help out here. So I think what you're asking is to take a look at this document.
Yeah.
On a simple spreadsheet, just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a brief explanation of what they are. Have the planning board look at it and see if they prioritize or have it come to the council to prioritize.
Yeah, I mean, it's the, it's the planning board's role. I don't want to step on their toes. It's just, it can be hard, I think, when you have all these applications flooding in, you have all, all your time is dedicated to that. And then, oh, and by the way, after listening to 4 teams of lawyers and consultants present about their plan, oh, now we're going to talk about, an update to our, I don't know, seasonal housing infrastructure or something. So let's pick a couple. And that's not, why didn't we get to it? Please, I'm not saying that. I'm just sort of, I'm a big fan of.
I like this one to prioritize though, because there are a lot of people have questions about the building that's almost occupancy ready, that I think Allison is saying was categorized as an inn, right? And
Yep.
it's employee dormitory style housing, right? So the questions people are buzzing around town with are, what prevents that from becoming an inn?
Mhm.
And I think what Allison is saying is that there isn't anything,
And-
right? So, and that's not the fault of the planning board. It's just that it's a new situation, right? So,
Well,
But we
I'd have to look back at that. There might be in the decision, like when it was reviewed and approved in the decision, there might be conditions. So I would, I don't have it in front of me and that was a while ago when it was approved, but I don't want that to be,
It was
Oh, no,
a
no.
lengthy
Concern.
and thoughtful decision that was.
Right.
made with a lot of-
Well, you were on the,
I'm singling it out because it's an only.
well, but there are things out here that nobody ever wants to acknowledge, like the Spring House rebuilt its employee housing. And, it's not like there's not a model out here. It's utilitarian. You're not going to be renting those rooms out next week for, whatever it is they rent rooms out for. I mean, it's employee housing. If you walk in the door, you know the difference. And instead of disparaging all this, it's not the town's responsibility to provide dormitory housing for the hotels. It's the business's responsibility, and it's just our responsibility to be sure they're allowed to do it. I mean, the Spring House was able to do it because they were rebuilding a lot of these places. If they're wise, know that they need to provide for employees.
Absolutely.
I think they're learning it.
For the record, the reason I went to dormitory housing is it's the first one my eye landed on. It's not because I'm advocating for it, but there are 2 important points here. One is the one Molly raises is one of the challenges we have when we want to make progress, because people say, oh, they're just going to turn that into an inn next year. And in fact, having sat through, I know what you, Allison, and the planning board did was a pretty comprehensive and thoughtful approval of that. Whether you ended up liking it is, sort of like separate and apart, but we, I view part of our job as explaining to people that actually, no, the planning board was concerned about that too. And yeah.
And
You
I
aren't disagreeing.
Oh, no, I'm not disagreeing. I'm
Yeah.
just, I know nothing about it.
Yeah.
I have no answer for those people, but what I am saying is if there are going to be more buildings like that, we should have that category. Yeah.
Right, and we should decide whether among the 8 things that are currently on the table from the comprehensive plan as potentially requiring a zoning ordinance change or other ordinance change, we should decide whether that's one of the ones that people want to do.
I think Marianne sort of nailed it, which is let's go through where they look like things, let's prioritize them and then figure out, go.
That's
get 'em.
exactly
And
right.
this may be number 5 or maybe number 1.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
yeah, we certainly, the planning board has done it in the past, prioritizing zoning amendments but it's been some time, so we can now try to circle back on that, put it on the agenda. I know a lot of focus in the past year or so has been on the accessory dwelling unit ordinances. So, but there may be time on future agendas to put some other zoning amendment priorities that the planning board has been wanting to get to.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Again, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we'll pull some language from the comp plan, and also I know I have a short list of others that may not be
That's
mentioned in here. For example, I know exterior lighting, that's something that's been raised a number of times. It's that section is dated, needs to be updated.
Right, right.
We do have several on our radar.
Hey, can I ask you a question, Allison? On the top of page 9, what is a sustainable tourism certificate program? What is that?
Well, you know, I'm probably not the best person to answer that. I know that the Tourism Council had been working on this topic, but I'm thinking that certain businesses, if they have meet certain requirements that, you know, they're promoting sustainable practices, probably like, for example, you know, not trying to
Right.
reduce the water consumption, that maybe, you know, having all those benchmarks, they could be certified as a sustainable business. So, but again, I haven't
Allison,
any background or expertise on that, so.
Allison,
Yeah.
so Molly, Jess is really on this, and we had a presentation 9 months ago. Somebody came in and talked all about this, and so the quick answer is Jess is the person who's on this, Jess Willie, from Sustainable Tourism, and it was a really good presentation. I think it'll come back around.
Isn't this the New Zealand presentation?
Yes, that was where it came from, but the application is now being adopted in this country.
Oh, this is the example, and the example it was, oh, they do it in New Zealand, therefore you can do it. And it was like, we're not a country.
But it was
It was
really
just-
about practicing sustainability.
But it wasn't. It was about, and
Anyway.
getting into the weeds here, but
Yeah.
it wasn't.
And the Tourism Council got funding through an intern that was allowed to complete a report. The intern spoke with a number of staff members and committee members, and they did come forward with reports. So Jess has all that stuff.
I'm jumping over here, on page 13, there's one of a couple of spots that refers to airport hazard zones. Sorry, I don't have my mic on. There's a couple of spots beginning on page 13 that talks about the airport hazard overlay ordinance.
Yes.
Yeah, T1A1, page 13. And I think it's mentioned in a couple of different spots.
Mhm.
And I have this vague recollection in the back of my mind about that being talked about a few years ago, but I was curious about whether that's something that should be, that we need to attend to. Not, I don't want to use should.
So as background, and Allison, I don't know how much you're involved, RIAC has brought this up almost every time for the last 3 years. And they say they really need it, they want to do it, why haven't we done it yet? And yet nobody quite knows what it is a little bit. And it comes up, basically it's a safety zone before the airport and after the airport. And this is sort of what messed Westerly up a bit. But this comes, what? No, I know, it's what, I mean, part of what happened. So they're trying to do it at every airport. I'm just remembering the meetings. This is something we should just do or not do, but it comes up all the time. And it just
Yeah, I had
never goes
forgotten
away.
that, thank you, Sven. That was the detail I had forgotten.
So it was, as part of the approval of our local comprehensive plan, a requirement to include this as an action item. So it is really a priority of RIAC and the state, not something locally that's a priority, but so the communities that host a state airport were required to include this action item of implementing a local ordinance, airport hazard overlay ordinance. I have been involved with it's been some time, but RIAC, I did have a meeting with them. I have the guidebook. I have the GIS layers. And I've spoke to other communities. Some communities have adopted it, some have not, yet. So it's less of it's less of a concern, I would say, RIAC, for our airport versus other communities that have more development and
I see.
trees around their airport. But yes, certainly. I mean, no one has reached out to me recently from the state about it or RIAC, but it's still here, and I can check back in with Middletown. I think Westerly adopted it. Middletown had been working on it. I'm not sure if they've adopted it yet. But we can certainly address it if RIAC is still pressuring the community to work on
Well, they don't exactly pressure, they just save it and pull it out every time.
it.
They
Yeah,
come over and say, oh, you haven't done this yet.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and they just use it as an excuse. Did Westerly settled, didn't it?
they
Or
adopted it.
not settled, the RAC won, didn't it?
One. I don't know.
The lawsuit, that's my understanding.
The tree cutting, I don't even know.
I think it was, I think it's not over. I know they're cutting trees.
Hey, Allison, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When you look through all this stuff, this is just asking you as a professional, when you look through all this stuff, do you say, I can't believe they haven't done X, or I wish they would do Y, or I think if I were there in their shoes, my priority would be Z. I like to ask people who actually know about this stuff, unlike me, sort of if you feel like there's an area that we should prioritize or emphasize that we haven't.
No, not off the top of my head. I don't think I could pick certain actions, but I'll certainly, as I, prepare for planning boards, prioritization of zoning, I can certainly make my recommendations to the planning board as to which ones maybe should be tackled. Certainly housing has been a priority. I mean, I think there's been a lot of, I would say I was impressed with how much the community has implemented and large items been implemented. So it wasn't, when looking at this didn't cross my mind, oh, I can't believe they didn't implement this yet. Just, I thought about how many action items we included in the comprehensive plan, and the state had mentioned that as well, that we were very, ambitious in our comprehensive plan, and to next time not include as many action items. So that's something to think about, but certainly the zoning, land use, something we could focus more on, implementing regulatory changes that would help reach, certain goals of the community.
Great, so.
I have three things, Allison, which are not necessarily for a huge discussion now, but maybe as follow-up, Marianne. One, GSP 2A4, which is the New Harbor Planning Study. And that was, we all know, or many of us know, the loop and the debacle and the refunding of that money. But I think that's either something we got to say we're going to do or not do, and what do we deal with the issues that are there and getting worse.
So with that one, we did we ended up doing kind of a scaled back traffic study on that last summer, correct?
Scale back's a nice word.
Well, yeah, it wasn't approved to fund. So, but that was.
I'm talking about funding, and I bring this up more as things that bubble up that easily may not get done. And then the second thing, because I know we're short on time, I would love to set a window of time, Marianne, to actually put a plan together and deal and do the Coast Guard campus. And it could be 3 years from now. I'm not pushing it for it to be near, but it's almost like all of my planning days and all of my town council days, which is probably 12 years in total, this subject comes up at every other 6-month review and everybody nods and goes, yes, we need to. And we try a little, so I'd love to say, look, by 2025 or whatever, you come up with a date. I don't care what, fine. Well, we may all like be dead by then. But my point being, let's just pick a pine and then go for that. Because otherwise we're going to be here in 2 years with the exact same discussion based on my experience.
I think we should just say we're not going to do anything until we get the Coast Guard station under control.
That would be step 2 of the 10-step
Oh,
process.
that's my step 1.
Okay.
Molly? You have anything? I just saw your green light on and I don't want.
Oh,
So we have some action items, right? Does that work for you, Mary Ann?
Yeah, we've got a handful of action. items.
Terrific. That's great. Yes. Allison, as always, thank you so much for your time. Thank
You're
you for
welcome.
helping us to clarify our thoughts on this stuff and thank you.
Okay, good luck with the rest of your meeting.
We missing anything, planning people? Did we forget anything? Was there anything you wanted to tackle? No, you got to come up.
Mary Anderson, I'm glad Sven brought up some of the chapters, and I know Allison, that's been on your mind too, to merge some of the sea-level work we've done into the planning.
Great. Terrific. Thank you, Allison. Have a good night.
You too, thanks.
Millie, do I need to open a public hearing? I don't recall, but what the heck? What the heck? 2 openings is okay with me. I would like to open, I'd like to make a motion to open the budget public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry.
Switch gears.
Oh, okay. Hi, Amy. Good to see you guys. Thanks for coming. All right, are we ready? There's a motion and a second on the floor to open the budget public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Okay, the public hearing is open. Anybody who would like to is welcome to come up. Come up, Bob. How are you? Just speak in, make sure the green light is on, identify yourself, etc.
Sure, green light's on.
Fantastic.
Bob Girardi, Superintendent of School. And so I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the school committee. They asked some of our staff and myself to come, just to tell you how comprehensive the budget was. We shared that document with you at the last time, and that the school committee really did a great effort of including everybody in the budget process. So we really had a good understanding of the school department needs. A lot of furniture and deferred maintenance and things that just need to be repaired, and that was a big part of our budget. We know that there was a reduction in our budget, but we also know that there might be an opportunity for you to add a little bit back to that. And so on behalf of the school committee and myself, if you have the opportunity to increase our budget, it would be greatly appreciated to the requested amount, or, as much as we could possibly get to help us out, that would be great. We're doing a lot of things to try and be as frugal as possible. The school committee is looking at different ways of staffing to make sure that we meet the needs of students, but we still have, significant needs that we have to address. So anything you could do to help our budget, we greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
And get that bag
I
of
see
money.
Lisa
that Amy-
back there. Are you coming up, Lisa?
Should we start with the 4% that we didn't start with last time?
If you'd like.
Could Amy start with that?
Whatever you want.
Sure. So I'll keep this relatively brief, but we can do more detail if you want. I think the important thing that Martha wants to convey is that this budget as presented currently maximizes the entire 4% tax increase that's allowable under state law. And therefore, any changes to the budget can't automatically be absorbed by raising taxes further. There needs to be trade-offs, either in reducing expenditures, raising other revenue, or making other adjustments within the confines of that tax levy.
So
Thank
better,
you.
better said, if you've got something you want to try and get funded, you've got to then come up with where it's going to get cut. Amy? How diplomatic.
All set? Lisa, can we hear from you, please?
I don't really have a solution or anything, but I was just gonna say, since the time of this, the school budget coming out, we've discovered that our ceramics kiln is limping along. It was originally purchased in 1989. So it's been there for a very long time. We have repaired it several times, so it's getting us through this year, but John Morphle came and looked at it and it needs to get replaced at some point soon. It's not very energy efficient either, so in the long run, it will help us. And the kiln that we would need to be purchasing is gonna be about $5,000, so I just wanted to.
Thank
throw
you.
that
That's
out there.
helpful. Anybody else? That's it?
Yeah, we have one other recommended change to the budget that,
Okay.
you know, this forum is a little bit new. So I'm going to take some public comment time to do that as finance director, which is that we've gotten quotes back for the current year for codification of the ordinances and the charter. That number is higher than we expected in the current year, which means we really need to be adjusting the fiscal year 24 number as well, so that we can be sure to keep current with the codification process.
Okay.
So which page are we?
So I'm on page 8 of 24, administration. And it's line number 5407, code updates. It's currently recommended at 4,500. The recommendation today would be to increase that by 5,500 for a total of 10,000.
Wow.
And that's a combination of, again, the quote that we have for the current year work and then the anticipated volume that would be necessary for the subsequent year.
Gotcha. So it's $5,500.
Additional $5,500.
Do you have a recommended location to move that from?
I don't at the moment, but
So keep in mind, at the very first budget session we had, we talked about and Amy, make sure I have my numbers right here. The reduction of the human resource position by about $46,000. And then we reallocated to the human service position about 18,000 of that, which left a balance of $28,000 that the council can allocate somewhere in the budget this year. With what Amy just brought forward of 5,500, that drops that 28,000 by 5,500. So you're at like 22,500. So this is a reminder to the council.
Thank you. I have a more general question for Marianne and Amy. That Lisa Robb's question about the kiln raises for me. And that is my understanding of our, what's within our purview as a town council.
So as a town council, as it relates to the school budget.
Yeah, I
is
was
that what
wondering,
you-
we couldn't do an appropriation of $5,000 and say this is for a kiln.
Correct. What you do is provide an appropriation to them, and it was completely up to the discretion of the school as to how they would spend that
Or
money.
we couldn't say, here's 20, we're kicking in an extra $10,000 and we want it to go to.
Right,
X.
you give the extra
Right,
$10,000.
yeah. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, you give what has happened is you give the extra 10,000 and the school will decide how to do that, just like we came forward recommended budget of a reduction of 50,000. We have no authorization or ability to say, this is how we would like to
Right,
see that
right.
reduced. It's
Yep.
strictly with the school committee.
Yep. I just was making it up. Just,
Keith, just making sure, setting expectations for this meeting. The goal is to listen, discuss ideas. We're not trying to decide where funding goes in this meeting, right?
no, that's, those are meetings for the
I'm-
week after next, yes.
Perfect.
Yes. Yeah. But if I recall correctly, this is our final budget public hearing.
Yes. Because in the previous meetings, when we went through a number of them, like fire, the rescue were short. You know, there were a number of areas that weren't fully funded, including the school, So I just, as we get down that road, we'll have opportunities. All 22,000 opportunities.
Exactly. Anybody else? Stephanie, Kate? Hey, Kristen, how are you today?
I'm Kristen Bauman, Director of the Island Free Library. So I missed that. I thought I was attentive here at meetings, but I didn't realize human resources had been scratched. And so my question is it a part-time position? Is it delayed? Does that free up money because it was to be hired now? Like, can I scramble for something right now in the budget?
You said you got everything you wanted in your budget.
I am on record for that.
Actually, I think it was, thank you.
But you know, things change. And so that's my question. And that's one question. And then my second is a follow-up from last time about the interior painting of the trim of the windows that were just replaced. And I wasn't sure if that was in a painting schedule, and I have found out that the painting schedule is only for exteriors of buildings. So I really think there has been great work and leadership on from Marianne about the Capitol, right? We've heard this, we understand this, we can follow this. But for you to know, it will crop up again for us.
Sure.
And we understand it's not in this year's budget, but it's also not in a schedule that I assumed. And so that's a correction that I've
Yeah.
now understand. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'd be happy to do a layman's version of the human resources versus thing, but why don't you go? I would, so here's my understanding. It was too big a bite in a tight budget to have new full-time department heads, basically. And the initial work of a human resources director, when you don't have one, we feel probably could be done on a consulting basis, consolidating records, implementing sort of standard procedures across departments, et cetera, et cetera. In addition, the human, if you haven't read the CV of the Human Services Director that we hired the other night, she has had very senior leadership positions, and frankly was more expensive than we had budgeted for. So it was those combinations of things.
So Keith, I'll let you know, this is my 30th budget presentation in my career. And finally, it's like, yes. You go through these workshops and you say, you often wonder, does the council understand? Are they able to articulate? And yes, you were able to articulate exactly what we decided.
Based on our meeting the other night, and I'm not sure if you were there or not, but we talked about the consult or this party that will come in, and that is, I'm just making sure, that is still budgeted, and that was in that reduced amount, which was low chart or org chart, sort of just getting the basics done so the person doesn't have to do all that, right?
Correct. And keep in mind, we had the compensation study that we did the interviews. I'll be coming forward to the council with that at the next meeting, and some other things such as job description, performances, and org chat is all part of that piece. This piece will be more reviewing, it's almost like an audit of where we are and where we need to go, and what's best staffing will be in place to do that. And some of it's to put some procedures we can put in place currently.
I want to follow up on something that Kristen asked that raised a question for me. One of the things that I know that we know at the table is that Tom has implemented essentially a computer-based system for maintenance items, so that things don't fall through the cracks, they come up and they get done. And I'm wondering whether that extends to things like interior painting of trim, or does sort of the thing have to be done and then it goes on the schedule?
So it's a work order-based system.
Yeah.
So something like that could be entered into the work order-based system, and then Tom
And
can
then it
decide
gets-
the funding and prioritize. and
Right.
stuff like that.
Okay.
So-
Hey, Bob.
So I can say it works really well. And basically, like, if I have a plumbing problem, I type it in. And then when Tom takes care of it, it comes off.
Wow.
So it
that's
really does
great.
work really well.
That's great stuff. Molly?
But I have a quick question about the trim at the library that Kristen brought up. So that seems to be like that doesn't seem like maintenance so much as the finishing piece of an ongoing project. Does that fall into the same thing? Is that maintenance, or is that like the end of an ongoing project?
So I think what's best about the trim is to allow me to talk to Tom and see where it is.
Absolutely. It's just an interesting, more macro question. Like, I'm assuming that is for things like what Bob just described, which is, the second floor, the second floor sink is leaking or whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's rules that we follow with that, right? Budgetary rules that, there's cap limits to bids,
Mm-hmm.
So I could put that in the FMX, which I also love and have used, and it's been great, but it wouldn't necessarily have the funding for it.
Right.
Right. And so it's a capital request because it's over a certain dollar amount,
I see.
which is the rule.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll carry it forward, or there'll be, or as Marianne, just said, she'll follow up with Tom, and maybe he has that in some money that, there is a facilities budget line in the
Mhm.
budget, and maybe.
So what I need to follow up with Tom
Yeah.
is, was this included in the
In the
original
bid
project?
package. Yeah, right.
In the
Yeah.
scope of work, exactly. And that unfortunately, right now, I Do not.
And nor should you. I just think we hear, I hear, you hear pretty regularly this kind of, are we doing enough maintenance? Are we, are we maintaining things, et cetera? And I think this system that Bob and Kristen are talking about is part of the step that, that you have to take to, make sure we are actually getting stuff done.
And keep up on it.
Yeah.
Because inputting everything and then not maintaining it. Yeah.
Okay, but since it's our last budget hearing, right, so I guess I'm just saying, like, do you have any, I mean, well, actually, do you have any idea how much the interior trim is going to cost to be painted?
That's just part of this, a little bit of, I don't know what we're in, but, I didn't make copies. I'm sorry, I ran out the door, but, so we submitted a request. And there were, Tom did work on bids. We unfortunately didn't get those bids from him when requests were due. So that request doesn't include the dollar amount. And I'm with Mary Ann, I couldn't tell you. I mean, he told trustees at a meeting maybe back in November. Is that when capital was due? November, maybe it feels like a long time ago right now. I don't remember what the number was.
Okay.
But I think he has two numbers. I think the contractor who's doing the windows brought someone over, and I think Tom had someone else look at the request, and I don't know more than that.
Okay.
So I don't have it. So the answer is no, I don't have a number for you.
Great. Mary Ann's going to check with Tom.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else? Nobody? I would make a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
By all means, second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Motion would be in order to adjourn this meeting.
Thank you. Thank you guys very much.
A second, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
I,
For that robust second. I know. Yeah, the bride didn't have any guests. I know. No.